Hey y'all, I'm Tracy and welcome to Just Dig It Farms. It's garden season, y'all, and I am excited. For those of you who are new to our channel, my husband Gene and I live here on our farm, Just Dig It Farms, in central Alabama, and we are Zone 8. Now, our official last frost date is not until March the 17th. And today is actually only March the 3rd. But the weather is beautiful. It's been warm. It's been in the 80s for the past, I don't know, couple of weeks. We've had a few cool days here and there, but I mean, it feels like spring, you guys. We usually always have a frost around Easter, and it's my practice to not really plant anything that's not cold hardy until Good Friday. Now, there are a lot of things that I do plant before Good Friday that are cold tolerant, like for instance, potatoes. A good time to plant potatoes is Valentine's Day. Now, I am a little bit late getting my potatoes planted, but today is the day we are getting them in the ground. Some other things that I plant before Good Friday is kales, cabbages, lettuces, kohlrabi, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower. I'm looking around my greenhouse at all of the things I've grown, and I need to be getting them in the ground. Carrots, beets, radishes, onions, my goodness, there's so many different things. Collards, turnips, there's so many different things that I like to go ahead and plant before Good Friday. And then usually once Good Friday's passed, I'm confident that I can go ahead and start planting my tomatoes and cucumbers and squash and all of those wonderful summer vegetables. I'm just a little bit behind on getting some of those things in the ground, but it's okay. I've still got time because I started almost all of those in the greenhouse here weeks ago, and they're big enough and established enough that when I do put them in the ground, they'll be producing before it gets too hot for them. Okay, y'all, let's get to my happy place and get in the garden and plant some potatoes. I got my order in this week from Hoss Tools. Now, chitting and cut and cure is something that you can do to your potatoes before you plant them. What chitting is it's a process where you sit it out and you let these little eyes that's on the potato, you give them time to sprout out before you plant them. It's not something that you have to do. It'll still grow when you put this in the ground, but it's something you can do. And since I have time, I'm setting mine out and gonna let them just sprout and do their natural thing until my bed's ready. Now, when I'm ready to put these in the ground, I definitely am going to do the cut and cure process. This is something that I think is pretty necessary to do. So what I'll do is I'll cut this potato probably in 4 pieces, just kind of checking it, making sure there's an eye or a sprout on each piece. And then I'll let them sit overnight, probably at least a full day, and let them cure. And what that does is, like where you cut it, it kind of lets that harden, and it just helps the potato have a better defense against any disease or insects when you put them in the soil. So cutting and curing is something that I like to always do, but the chitting process is not something really that you have to do, but I like to do it if I have time. So I have time today because my bed's not ready. So I've got these plant trays and I've got a paper towel down, and I'm just setting my potatoes on the trays. I've got a tray for each potato because I like to keep them separate. I like to mark them in my garden, and I like to know my varieties and exactly what I've grown. I like to keep records of everything. So I'm gonna put my label in here with the potato so I remember who's who, and I'm gonna put it over here in the sun and let it do its thing and sprout until I'm ready to get this in my garden. So I let my potatoes sit about 2 weeks, and during the chitting process where they developed these eyes, now I'm going to cut these potatoes into about 4 pieces each potato, just making sure that there's an eye or 2 or 3 on each wedge that I cut. And I'm doing this a day or 2 before I'm ready to plant them so that they can cure and just makes them more disease resistant once we put them in the ground. So what you want to do when you plant potatoes is do like a trench. This is kind of a trench here in these rows. And then you want to take your seedlings and have the sprouts upward and just press them into the ground with the little sprouts pointing upward. Then I'm going to come back and cover these with some really good compost that I just got. Once I get all my potatoes planted and they start developing their foliage, when the foliage gets about 6 to 8 inches high or so, then I'm going to come in and I'm going to put calcium nitrate all along the side of my potato rows. Then I'll come all at the same time. I try to do this all at the same time. Then I'm going to come and cover that potato foliage with either compost, soil, hay, whatever organic matter I can get my hands on at the time. I'm going to cover up that foliage and leave just a little tip end of the foliage showing. What that does, why you want to do that, is it encourages the tubers of the potatoes to go deeper and wider and develop more new potatoes. So the more you can do that, the more potatoes you should get. Now, it's not going to take long at all for that foliage to just come through the soil or the compost. When it does, I'm going to repeat the same steps again. I'm going to calcium nitrate and about 2 weeks apart or so, and then I'm going to cover again with my soil or compost. I'm planting 4 different varieties of potatoes this year. I'm planting the Red Norland, which is what this one is that we're planting right now. This is Red Norland. And I'm planting Kennebec, Yukon Gold, and one more, German Butterball. I'm planting Kennebec, German Butterball, Yukon Gold, and Red Norland. That's the 4 varieties that I'm planting this year. On my garden plan for the year, which is my plan and map for this whole potager garden that I've already planned for the whole year, I've got to change it because I was going to put my potatoes in my first bed, and I planted a rye cover crop in bed 1 and bed 2 this winter. I've never planted a rye cover crop in my potager beds before. I've planted it like in the field where we were going to be tilling, or in my pathways, that kind of thing, but I've never planted them inside my potager beds. So we don't till the potager garden beds. I practice complete no-till in the potager beds. So my strategy for the cover crop of the winter rye is I came in and I weed tarped the whole bed. Chase and I covered the whole rye bed with a weed tarp and just let that weed tarp kill it out, suffocate it out, and kill it. And it did a really great job. It took about 2.5 weeks or so, but it did a really great job of killing that ryegrass. So then I was just going to come in and kind of, hoe it, work it up a little bit, and form my rows. Well, that ryegrass is like, it has a root structure on it like this deep, and it is thick and thatched, which is really a good thing because that's nutrients and everything adding back to your soil. So it's not like it's something you want to dig up and dig out and remove from your garden. You want it to be in your beds and worked in your beds. But because I'm practicing no-till, I can't really till that up in my bed. And I'm past time on planting my potatoes. I really like to have my potatoes in the ground by February 15th or so. Today is like March 3rd. And the reason I didn't get them on the 15th is I was waiting on that weed tarp to kill out my cover crop. So I've got a lot of work to do to that bed to get it ready to plant, and I need to get my potatoes in the ground today. So I decided to go ahead and change my garden plan for the year, and my potatoes are going to go in bed 3 and bed 4 this year. So I'm just swapping things around a little bit, which is okay. It's good to be flexible. You need to be flexible. If you're not flexible, if you can't bend, then you're going to break. So it's very good to be flexible. So I changed my plan up of where I'm going to plant my potatoes. So my strategy for getting my beds ready that has this winter rye in them is, like I said, I weed tarped it, killed it out, removed the weed tarp, and I'm using my tool, and for the life of me, I cannot think of the name of that tool right now. When I figure it out, I'll put it across the screen here, but my mind is just blank. I can't remember what it's called. I'm taking that tool and I'm working the bed, working that soil, turning it over a little bit. And then I've went and got some really good compost, and I'm going to use that compost to just make my rows and just let all of that, the roots of that rye and everything just kind of rot into the soil. And I'm just going to make mounds with the compost on top of the soil, on top of that thick rye, and just see how that works. But I probably won't, unless this is just like, wow, you know, really grows some magnificent food in those beds this year. I probably won't do winter rye in my potager beds again, just because it's so hard to get it killed off and worked back into the soil to be able to plant. So I probably won't use winter rye as a cover crop in my potager beds again. Unless, like I said, it just turns out that these two beds end up growing some really great food, and then I might repeat the same thing again. All right, let's get back to planting potatoes. Hey y'all, it's the next day and I finished planting all my potatoes yesterday. Today I'm getting kale and cabbage in the ground. This kale is Blue Ridge. This one was Red Russian and this one is Lacinato, and I've already planted a lot of them over in the other bed. So I'm gonna finish getting these planted and then we'll pop the cabbage in the ground. All of these are ones that I've been growing in the greenhouse from my Hoss Tool seed, and they did great. They're a little bit leggy because I've kind of left them in these little containers for too long, but I think they'll be just fine. got all my kale planted, and now we're gonna plant the cabbage. I've got Golden Acre, Red Acre, and Cheers, and all of these I grew in the greenhouse from Hoss seeds. So we're gonna get these in the ground. Top bunch collards. Well, y'all, in the past 2 days, we've got 2 beds of the potager garden planted. It's a little bit messy in here right now. I've still got weed tarps I got to put up, and we are replacing the bed borders. We had a tornado a couple of years ago, and it knocked down a bunch of trees, and we moved them and used them as logs and bed borders in the potager garden. Well, they've rotted, and they're just wearing down, so we've got these new bed borders that we're placing. Look at that stack over there. Our friends Zach and Jacqueline Head at Head Family Farm, they are using these same blocks, wood blocks, for their bed borders in their new potager garden, and they got them from their neighbor, and he had a bunch more. So we made a trip on a Sunday and went down and visited with them, hung out with Zach and Jacqueline and Eleanor, and it was Zach's birthday, so we celebrated his birthday, and we went to get these bed borders, and they were just too heavy for the trailer. So Mr. Otis said that he would bring them to us, and we took him up on that offer.
Happy Valentine's Day to me. Here's my load of wood from Mr. Otis. My bed borders.
We've got to do this by hand.
You're kidding. Are you kidding?
No.
I was afraid of that. Oh Lord, that is a lot of wood. Didn't know we had to do it by hand though. Gracious.
Your dog, baby. You know better. You don't want to feed him.
Man, this is gonna be a job, Chase.
We done did our job. It's your job now.
So this is going to be a big project, but Jean has started now. We're probably going to use these logs, some of them for firewood, and some of them I might make a hugelkultur garden somewhere, a spot somewhere. I'm thinking about it. But for now, we've got a mess. We're in the process of replacing these. In bed number 3 of the potager garden, let's take a look at what all we've planted in the past 2 days. Okay, these are my half moon circles here, and I've got Red Acre cabbage and Cheers cabbage, Golden Acre cabbage, and then those last 2 rows back there are kales, and I have Red Russian and I have Blue Ridge kale in those. Then over here, these are the potatoes in the rows, and I've got 3 rows of Red Norland and 2 rows of Kennebec. And then as you come down this way, right here and here and over there, there's 2 beds. This is top bunch collards. And then I've got this space right here, and I'll probably do some flowers there. Okay, bed 4 here, I've got Cheers cabbage, Red Acre cabbage, Red Russian kale, and then the last one over there is lacinato kale. Then we've got these rows of potatoes here, and I did 3 rows of Yukon Gold, and the last rows over there is German Butterball. Now what's coming up right here is chickpeas. This, I had planted these as a cover crop fall, and that Arctic blast we had killed them, but they started coming back up just kind of sporadically. So I thought I would just leave them and just see what happens. It's just a few. Then on these little rows, I've got pak choi, and then from that tag back is tiny hidoi. I don't really know how to say it. It's a little tiny pak choi. Then as we come over here to this side, I've got rainbow chard in the middle of this row. And I'll probably come back and maybe plant some spinach or something beside it. Then on this side, I've got kohlrabies. And there's 2 different kinds here. My plant tags got mixed up. I've got Quick Star and I've got Purple Vienna. Thank you guys for hanging out with me the past few days in the potager garden. God bless you, and I will see y'all on the next video.